Is this on? Guess what?
It's the post pod.
There it is.
It's the post pod, V. Let's
It's the
do this
post
thing.
Let's go. JP and James.
Yeah, so fascinating. Like, it's so obvious now when after I read their paper.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, man, like, and I know you had the similar experience because we talked about it before, but like, it was instantaneous when people in my group were saying, "Oh, let's just run an ecom business, direct to consumer." Even the prof, I think, was like, "Oh, a lot of people run ecom," and so there's a lot to it that isn't, um, in terms of the business model, that isn't often talked about.
Yeah.
Like, you hear about how easy it is to get on Shopify. You hear about how easy it is to sell things.
Yeah.
Or even outsourcing and manufacturing products from wherever. But actually running the business profitably is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting to me that it's rarely ever talked about.
We touched on this in the episode, but I think what's interesting, even a lot of these startups, their focus is not profitability.
No.
Right from the get-go. And it could take 5-6 years before, like, all of a sudden that lens has to change. And unfortunately, it doesn't set up a business for success. And at the end of the day, we have to make sure, as well, I guess, another responsibility is for the marketer, is how do you become more abreast and more knowledgeable in all areas of the business to help identify the opportunities? Because I loved what JP said around, like, the being commercially creative.
Mm-hmm.
We naturally have that creative gene, but we rarely use it in that context.
Mm-hmm.
We're always thinking in the likes of ads, making sure you're creating those unique, those distinct assets, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like, hey, let's think creatively around how can we drive margin. I've never been asked that. I don't know if you've ever been asked that. And even in our shared experience as a legacy retailer, e-commerce was almost the lens was never around profitability. The lens was an additional revenue stream for the organization.
Mm-hmm.
I remember sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, or in our case, it was the revenue stream originally.
Yeah. But I remember one of our leaders at the time would constantly say is like, drive top line and then you manage bottom line. But you're looking at that organizationally. So potentially you're not looking at it in its isolation to say, okay, well, e-commerce in totality, like running the actual P&L from a profitability perspective, is a completely different conversation that I don't believe many organizations are taking the time to genuinely understand what it all entails. And man, the vampire analogy, the value chain vampires, all the widgets to add and create, like, all this. And I wanted to ask them, and unfortunately didn't have time, but it was around, like, the big conversations around winning the last mile. Retailers are trying to win the last mile. How do you do that digitally without overextending yourself and ruining potential profitability, especially if you're a small business?
Yeah. Well, actually, this is where my brain was short-circuiting, I think, because so especially about winning the last mile, I was flashing back to when we had those conversations with Herman, Simon, around profit and around costs and around setting your pricing strategy and whatnot.
Yeah.
Because in a competitive market, if all your competitors are offering free returns, then do you have to as well? So then, like, especially if you've got your 24-hour delivery times.
Yeah. Same day delivery.
Yeah. What James was, I think it was, or maybe what James or JP, maybe it was JP, saying that, like, even if you had the ability to schedule your routes a bit better, so it meant like end of next day delivery instead of same day delivery, you might be able to better organize your routes so you're more efficient and then not burning as much of your cash that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just getting a widget to somebody today, and that's the only thing in the truck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, the pricing strategy and then the competitive nature of the offering for e-com across the board isn't always as easy to buck a trend against because of the demands or perceived expectations from customers.
Well, and those expectations are being, sorry, the new benchmarks are really being displayed by those larger organizations that probably have a lot more money to burn. So if we use Amazon as an example, same day shipping with their Prime product. Yes, we
Mm-hmm.
pay for Prime, but the thought that I can have it in the same day is kind of appealing.
Yeah.
Do I have the same expectation from a mom and pop shop? I wouldn't say I do, but at the same time, would it be nice to have? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But if it doesn't now, if that mom and pop shop can't make it work, will I hold that against them? I don't know. Maybe not. But I think we have to start, almost like compartmentalizing and making sure you're building profit models that are for your business and make sense for your business, and not just follow what the trends are out there potentially by organizations that are just, maybe the
Mm-hmm.
quadruple size of what you are, that you just can't follow. So you just have to be really good at what you
Mm-hmm.
can do instead, and focus on that and find efficiencies.
Mm-hmm. The other comment you had just made was around uh, optimize for top line, manage for profit later, I think is what you said.
Yeah. Drive to, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember hearing that, but now having heard the sausage roll principle, I think
Yeah.
differently about that, because it's almost like if you're going down that path where if you're driving for profit through ecom, or sorry, driving for revenue through ecom and managing for profit later,
Yeah.
it's very possible you'll never get to the profit. And in the case that James had talked about, that case study, I'm going to look up the case study. Um, you're almost like, if you think about top line versus bottom line, it's
Hmm.
you're going to create the future that you had set up yourself for. So I almost feel like with the sausage roll principle, you almost have to go, our objective is to have the ability to serve however many customers at a profit margin of X,
Hmm.
and we're going to build capacity and capabilities to be able to do that.
Hmm.
And so working backwards from there, then you go, here's how much we need to set our pricing at, here's how we're going to establish our return policy, how we're
Yeah.
going to establish, our shipping policy or thresholds for free shipping, all that kind of stuff. Things like, even for that matter, which tech we're going to put into our stack, because something like TrueFit
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
end up being the thing that saves you, that takes your ecom returns from, like, I don't know, $600,000, like I had
Yeah.
calculated, down to like
250.
100,000
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I wish, it's funny because like I completely agree with you. It's almost being myopic, approaching it from that lens. Say just drive top line, manage bottom line later. Because if you're managing bottom line later to find profitability, then you're going back to what we were talking about in the episode around being those knee jerk reactions. So you're laying people off,
Mm-hmm.
you're reducing marketing budgets, you're doing what you can in the short term to show that profitability, which isn't sustainable, because
Mm-hmm.
it will come back around, and to continue to deliver against a promise that you've set up, you're going to have to bring people back. You're going to have to make sure that you're building those mental availabilities through marketing budgets, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like this vicious cycle that gets created. And unfortunately, I wish I could have rebutted at that time to our leader, but it's yeah, it's for me like, actually we talked about it with Yasmin as well. The role of a marketer is evolving, and it's
Mm-hmm.
evolving more and more. And we think about product marketers as kind of being the one that's more in tune with a lot of these other elements. I
Mm-hmm.
think traditional marketers have to start investing the same energy and the same idea and understanding, what is those business models,
Yeah.
making sure you're becoming friends with your finance team, and it's not just to get more money. There's just so much there that we can be doing a lot
Mm-hmm. Yeah. James mentioned that too. I'm trying to remember now. Maybe it was JP, but either way, like sitting down with finance and working on an annual budget with them
Yeah.
is great. Rather than going, here's my budget, lobbing over a fence, and then they lob it back with a whole bunch of red marks.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, okay, that's what I have. Great.
Cool.
And so, I think that's a really practical way of bridging the gap and
Hmm.
creating a common language
Yeah.
for the business, which is, and for marketing, and really between all departments. But I think that's a key component for marketing for sure.
Hmm. One thing that really stands out to me as we continue to venture down this path and, you know, bring on some incredible guests is, and I know you wrote a piece around ROAS and how it's, you know, it's probably not it's not probably not, it is not the right KPI. I think for me, it's becoming resoundingly clear is you need to find that shared language in the business context to show how you're actually driving value.
Yeah.
Looking at it in an isolated stance, your ROAS metrics based on your digital marketing investment is not the right strategy, because then it's hard for you to tie back to true business results, because it's just a messy number. And I love that that's becoming more and more clear to me that that is not the right metric. And we as marketers have to invest in business metrics, genuine business metrics, and not just stay in our own like small little toolbox. Hey, these are our metrics. You just have to conform to this. Look at us. We're amazing because we had 1 million impressions, but that's
Totally.
cool.
Yeah, like, you know, I think return, there's an assumption that I make anyway. I don't want to speak on behalf of all marketers everywhere, but
Yeah.
I have an assumption in general. I had an assumption that when we said return on investment or ROAS, I mean, ROAS is a bit more definitive because you're talking about ad spend. So you're talking about return on ad spend for ROAS.
Mm-hmm.
But what is that return?
Yeah.
And so, and what does that mean? And what is a good return? What's a bad return? I think that kind of conversation is super helpful.
Yeah.
For example, and I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but way back when we had, when you and I were working together at Check, I had that project where we plugged store sales into Facebook, provided that somebody was willing to share their information with Facebook, and it was anonymous and scrubbed and cleaned and all that kind of stuff. But about 3% of the purchase data went from our store tills, in-store sales, went into Facebook to evaluate where those sales could be attributed to. So
Yeah.
against the ads we were running on Facebook, number one was reach-based ads. So those are social flyer ads. Not surprising, that generated the most sales, like by a long shot.
Yeah.
Number two, though, on the list of ads was retargeting ads. We're driving in-store sales, or at least linked to the exposure. A retargeting ad was linked to exposure second most out of all the ads we were running in relation to in-store sales of the 3% that were there. And it's still like a significant number of transactions that we were tracking. So if we're talking about ROAS and all we're doing is showing your e-com sales, you're missing out on a huge percentage of offline sales that you never would have attributed to the return had you not had that data.
Yep.
And had we not done that project with Facebook, we never would have known that either.
No.
So just because you can't measure it doesn't mean it's not real. And so I think that's where there's this, like, you almost need to explore what the possibilities are of return.
Yeah.
To figure out which things you can measure and which things you can't measure, rather than saying my ROAS is 3 and making it a definitive, like, it's 3. Maybe it's a minimum of 3.
Yeah.
Because you're not able to measure X, Y, and Z, other things that we think are making a contribution to.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you.
And that's it.
We've reached consensus.
Anyway, they're so, I mean, they're really, really smart dudes. And they've spent a lot of time thinking about this and presenting and building up an amazing case study with the Gravity of Ecommerce paper that they did. So I'm really grateful we got the chance to chat with them about it.
No, me too. And obviously thankful for their time there. And I think go ahead.
One other thing I want to ask you about, because I don't think we've talked about this, digital availability. What did you think about that idea?
You know what? I actually liked it. I think their language is important. I actually had it as one of my notes here. It's around that. How do you make sure that people understand what it is that you're actually talking about? So looking at physical availability in its primitive definition versus digital availability, while even if you were to ask me, someone were just to prompt me on the street, say, define physical availability, I would have naturally went bricks and mortar, naturally.
Yeah.
So I think creating that delineation between the two through that way, I think, I'm all on board with that. What do you think?
Yeah, it makes tons of sense to me. Like the stuff I added at the end, I thought was is just a way for me to think about it. Because if you think about a physical store and a business model of a store,
Mm-hmm.
you've got your leasing costs. There's the operational cost of the store,
Yeah.
electricity, heating,
Cleaning.
cleaning, that kind of shit, right? That you're just doing. Let alone the inventory that goes into the store
Yeah.
and the signage up front and the signage inside, and to make it look good and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So and then if you're in a mall, let's say, like, there's getting signage on the outside of the mall, or wayfinders that point towards your store and things like that.
Yeah.
All those things are part of that business model, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't have that on a website if there is no traffic coming, because you have
True.
natural traffic coming from the mall
The
itself.
mall.
But if there's no traffic coming, or very limited traffic coming, then paid ads themselves that are driving for, let's say, ROAS optimized ads or click-based ads or whatever, that's not really an ad in the same way that an ad,
That's a good
we
point.
typically think of an ad. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
is, like, especially search ads. It's a wayfinder.
Yeah. It is.
So it's almost not. And then because it's not an ad, it should be. And I think JP had mentioned this, or fuck, I keep getting messed up. Who
Doesn't
said
matter.
what? But anyway, yeah. So then the merchandising, like the laws of merchandising, need to apply to some of those kinds of ads, and the
Mm.
expectations are different than, say, a traditional brand ad,
Yeah.
or a print ad, or an out of home ad, or whatever.
Well, actually, touching on merchandising, that what you just said there, and the line that I'm going to get it wrong. I don't know if it was JP or James either. I think it was JP, but just around, like, you have to start thinking in the context of a merchandiser, and that is a unique skill set. Not saying that you can't be adopted, but I think that then changes again how you start viewing either your channels, your communication strategy, and everything else that helps, again, at the end of the day, drive revenue for your
Mm-hmm.
e-commerce business. But usually we talked about, like, the proverbial funnel. You don't see fulfillment in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not part of our vernacular naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are running e-commerce, you have to think about it fundamentally different versus just like, hey, how do you get the brand awareness? And I know JP called out brand marketers a little bit there, but
Mm-hmm.
at the end of it, it's you still have to find a way to drive or show that you're able to drive, well, revenue, profitability, whichever KPI you're kind of
Mm-hmm.
going against.
Value in some way.
Value.
Yeah.
That's a better
Yeah.
word. Well done. Value.
Yeah.
Drive value.
Yeah. Super interesting. The other part that I was just thinking about was, like, fuck, now we got to figure out finance. We got to figure out merchandising. Like, in addition to the marketing part, that's just our job. Like,
There's a
and you
lot.
do. Yeah, there's a lot, man. Maybe that's part of the reason why it's so difficult for a CMO having a tenure that they do, because
Yeah.
they have to know a lot of things about many
Mhm.
topics, as opposed to knowing deeply about one. So to James' point, though, or JP's, here we go again. To both their points,
To JJ.
maybe yeah, maybe that's partly the advantage of a marketer, is being
Yeah.
able to see across silos within an organization, because
Mhm.
we have a customer perspective.
Yeah.
Um,
But we have to be
and
willing to take on that role, though.
totally.
And usually, I don't want to say, I don't want to speak for every marketer out there. We're very, very
Go ahead.
comfortable.
Just say
Speaking on behalf of all marketers, we are very comfortable in just what we know. And the moment that starts stretching us, I think that's where we start losing some of that confidence, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, and especially when we start wearing
Yeah.
in the areas of business, that's like an area we do not want to touch.
Yeah.
So just let me drive ads. I'll drive awareness for you, and I'll tell
Yeah.
you how
Or I'll
well, how
just be a
good.
growth marketer,
Exactly.
right?
Lead gen, demand gen, all the
Acquire.
gens.
Yeah. And so, like, just acquire new customers, forget about profitability in any way.
Exactly. We'll let you figure that out.
Yeah.
And then they cut your budget, and then you're already bitching. Anyways, sorry.
Hit a nerve.
I did hit a nerve. We do have more of a responsibility than what we do take on.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that's part of it too, is to say, like, here, as a part of a annual strategic plan, like, there's the things that marketing is going to do, but then there's the ways that marketing can contribute back to the business. And so
Yeah.
they might not be the same. Like, there might be an ad plan to help
Yeah.
support ecom, to support the sales of the business or
Yeah.
sales teams of the pipeline, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then there may be also this other component of, like, help us understand the business model and where we make money so that we can apply our creativity to helping
Solve business
increase
problem.
profitability and solve
Yeah.
business problems. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that lens and being able to empower marketers to contribute in that light is actually very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Because it does force you to think about your role in the business a lot differently than maybe what it's been
Totally.
predetermined, and that's where you start adding value.
Yeah.
Maybe it's on us to change that paradigm of CMOs being the shortest, or I guess like the shortest time in office, so if you speak. It's because maybe we do need to become more immersed in all facets of business and help and solution creatively, because that's something that we do have. A lot of those problem statements that may surface.
Yeah. Yeah. V, that was a great chat.
Great post-pod, man.
Yeah, that was really fun. It's
Oh,
good. It's good to think about, like, this is, yeah.
it's stretching, man. I'm with you. Like, this is not part of our daily conversation. And thinking about e-commerce in this light obviously starts shedding different light. So I love these conversations when we get to venture outside of even our comfort zones.
Yeah. Well, and this, we teased it a little bit before, but this is the place, quote unquote, of the 4Ps conversation that we were talking about.
That's true.
And it is definitely one of the more challenging things, I think, to wrap your head around. Price
Couldn't agree more.
is in that space too, but less so because we always think about discounts.
Yeah.
As,
Let's put it on sale.
yeah. But yeah, place for sure is a really interesting idea. And there's a lot of opportunity, I think, if you just put some thought into and time into, like, thinking about the innovation that's possible in creating new value in the place that we operate.
Yeah. Agreed.
Cool.
Awesome.
V, have a good August off, and we'll catch you in
too.
September.
See you on the flip side.
Ciao.